So today we want to be talking about Romans chapter 7, verses 7 through 13. If you remember last week, we spoke about the law of Moses. And if you remember the law, it causes us to be stirred up inside for sin. The law says, for example, don't do something. And then inside we start to desire that very thing. We've been stirred up by the law. It causes me to desire what God says not to do.
Okay.
Now, that's a fact. And so the question, you think about it, you read the letters of Paul, and you think, oh, does that mean that the law is absolutely no good? No, the law itself is very, very good. The law is holy. The law is perfect. So now what's the cause of the problem? Sin is the problem, not the law. Our sin is the problem, and we're going to be discussing that today. So if we look at our outline in chapter 7, we're talking about how the law itself is good. Can you see that there? But the law does not have power. So some people think that if they follow the law, it will make them good. But that's not going to work because the law cannot give us any power. The law is just facts. This and this and this and this. The law is just rules. That's it. It's not going to help me. It's not going to empower me. My body and my flesh sees this list of no, 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 and it stirs me up inside with a desire to do what's wrong. If you remember, we talked about this last week. We talked about when you see a sign. Suppose someone has painted a bench and the paint is wet. And so they post a sign saying, a warning, do not touch the wet paint. Now, I myself see that sign and I'm curious, is it still wet? Is the paint still wet? Then I might touch it. That might be my inclination, right? So this is a perfect example. When you say no, then someone becomes stubborn and they want that all the more. Now, why is that? It's because inside of us is sin. Each of us inside has sin. So it says that when we were controlled by our old nature would be our old flesh. It's talking about before our salvation. Sinful desires were at work in us. The old nature, it really means the flesh. So before you were saved, you were in the flesh. Okay? The flesh, referring to sin. And the law aroused evil desires. Remember, we discussed stirring up. So I read the law, I read this list, and it stirs up these desires within me, these evil desires, these temptations, right? So I read it, and I'm tempted to do those things. I think that for each of us, honestly, if we evaluate ourselves, we'll see that to be true, that in our flesh.
No.
The law is commands. That's it. The law does not empower us at all. So if you'll see in the Old Testament, you'll see the Jews face temptation over and over. They were stirred up and and drawn down by the law. Okay, they were stirred up inside by their desires. The evil desires within us were stirred up, and it produced what? A harvest of sinful deeds. And the result was death. The law was previously our master. It was over us. We were under the law. We were stuck. We were stuck. The law ruled over us. The law showed us where we were wrong. Ooh, I'm wrong. And yet it did not give me any help in fixing the problem. The law judged us, right? And yet gave us no power to overcome our sin. And that's the problem with the law. The law says don't. The law says don't do it. And inside the sin wakes up. It's like when we're asleep and we wake up, and then it wants to do that. We were stuck like in a cycle, over and over and over continuously. But when we died with Jesus, when we were baptized with him, the law loses its power over us. If you remember, we talked about this in chapter 6. Now that I'm saved, I have died to sin as well. I don't have to sin. I can say no. Chapter 7, verse 6, but now we have been released from the law, for we died to it and are no longer under its power. You have been released. Remember the example that was given of the woman who was married? They have marriage law, for example. The woman that was married, she is bound to that one husband. That marriage law says she can't be married to another. The marriage continues, but if she marries a second one, no, that's forbidden by the marriage law. But when the husband dies, the woman is then free to marry another. And that marriage law no longer applies to her anymore. Now we can serve God, not in the old way of obeying the law, but in the new way of living by the Spirit. Now we live in the Spirit. Before, we lived under the law, and it was a cycle of our temptations and sinful desires being stirred up, and we lay that aside, and now we live by the Spirit. The law gave us no power, but the Spirit gives us power, absolutely. The Spirit gives us victory. So I'll go ahead and read chapter 7, verses 7 to 13. What then shall we say? Is the law sin? So a person's thinking, the law, it doesn't help me, doesn't mean that the law is sinful. No. Yet, if it had not been for the law, I would not know sin. The law helps me to understand what sin is. And we'll be discussing that.
For
For, and this is Paul, he's talking about himself now, and he says, for I wouldn't have known about coveting. ASL time, teach me your sign, the best sign for covet. Okay? Covetous. Good. That's a good sign. All right. So Paul himself is talking about himself, and he says in his experience, he says what? He goes, I wouldn't have known about coveting except the law told me, do not covet. Okay?
No, but we say,
Looking at verse 8, but sin, seizing the opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of coveting. For apart from the law, sin is dead. Okay, and I'll explain this in more detail. Looking at verse 9, for in the past, I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin became alive, and I died. This is Paul's own experience. Okay? Looking at verse 10, the very commandment that promised life proved to be death to me. Verse 11, sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, deceived me, and through it killed me. So this will be a part of the passage we'll look at next week. We don't have enough time, so there'll be a second part next week where we discuss these other verses here. The law is what? It's holy. Sin, no. The law is holy. And the commandment is holy and righteous and good. Verse 13. Did that which is good then bring death to me? No. That was sin that produced death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. So there's a lot going on here, and we'll be discussing some of this next week as well. But looking at the first couple points here, the law shows me my sin. This means what? It's like a mirror for me. I think, well, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty holy. I'm good. But then I look in the mirror, and the mirror reflects my heart, and I realize I am not good. It shows me who I really am. The second point is that sin will twist God's good command. So the main idea that we want to look at is that God's law is good. The law does show me my own sin. And sin inside, that's the real problem. Is the law the problem? No. My sin that's inside of me, that's the problem. And sin uses the law to show me how very much I actually need Jesus. In other words, there's another verse in the Bible that says that the law leads us to Christ. Okay? So I try to save myself by following the law, and I find out just how horrible I actually am. It's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, Jesus, the cross, he died for me. And I accept that, and I'm saved. That's the law's job, to point me to Jesus. Looking at chapter 7, verse 7 in Romans, and Paul's writing, and he says, am I suggesting that the law of God is sinful? He says what? He says, no. In fact, it was a law that showed me my sin. From now on, if you have the words that are important, the Greek explains the definition. I'm going to put them in a little box. If you see a little yellow box, that's a definition of a word. So the word law, what does that mean? It means rules and commands from God.
Thank you.
The second definition is for the word sin. Sin. Now, what does this mean? It means that everyone has done what is wrong, but what is the definition of sin from the Bible? Missing the mark. Okay? That would be the definition. Okay? So, what does that mean? Notice the picture here. You have a dartboard. It's a perfect example. I remember going over to Dusty's house, and he has a dartboard there at his house. And he gave me a dart, and boy, I was lousy tossing it at the dartboard. I threw it, and I actually broke the dart. I missed. Okay? I missed. That's the point.
No.
So notice on the picture here, there's all these darts, and this is an example of us in our effort. There is the target, right in the middle. That's God himself, his righteousness, his holiness hits a bullseye, right? If you want to successfully go to heaven, you must hit the bullseye right in the middle there. It's a narrow road. It's not a broad road. Okay, so we're talking about our righteousness here. And you throw all those darts. The goal is the bullseye, but you miss, and you miss, and you miss, and you miss all around the dartboard. Now that's every one of us in this room. Each person, we have all missed the righteousness of God. That's what God requires, is that bullseye, the righteousness of God. So we're all throwing these darts and we're just going crazy all over that dartboard, but we're missing the righteousness of God. And so sin means to miss the mark being in the middle, the bullseye, and we have all missed it. Okay? That's what it means to sin. God's requirement is perfection, and I miss it. Okay? The darts that I throw totally miss the whole board. Okay? If you remember in Romans chapter 3, verse 23, it's an example here of missing the mark. And it says, for everyone has sinned, for everyone has missed the mark. Okay? We fall short of what? We fall short of God's glory. Okay? So this picture here is showing that our darts just hit the ground. They don't even hit the board. Okay? The famous verse for witnessing is Romans 3:23, right here. Okay? Again, we're looking at verse 7. It says, of course not. In fact, it was the law that showed me my sin. The law showed me my sin. So how many of you have been in an MRI before? Okay. I have. They warned me that some people freak out when you're put in the MRI machine. I thought, yeah, I'll just wait. It didn't bother me at all. Some people, I guess, get really scared because it's kind of claustrophobic in the machine and they freak out. So that's probably anxiety medicine that they can give you if you're nervous. But I was fine. I didn't care about it. Anyway, so if you have an MRI machine, what does it do? It shows the doctor what's going on inside, right?
You have that.
Maybe you'll have a bulge or pain in your side, and the doctor feels around and he can't tell what the problem is, so he puts you in an MRI and it takes a picture. And you look at that picture and you can see what's going on the inside.
No.
So the MRI shows the doctor what's going on inside, what's wrong with it. Now, in the same way, the law is like an MRI machine, okay? I think that, well, I'm fine, I'm holy, I'm good, that's what I think. And then the law shows up, and it's like being put in an MRI, and it's like, no, you failed the test. You missed the mark. Okay? That's what the law does. Okay? The law shows me my sin. I'm blind to my own sin. I think I'm fine. Oh, I'm good, I'm righteous, I'm holy enough, I'll get to heaven. And the law shows up and goes, no. And it takes that picture and we find all of these sins within us. Okay. That's what the law does. Now God gave the law for what purpose? To show us our sin. Okay. The MRI takes a picture and we realize in the same way the law does as well. The law shows my sin. And you see I put down the brackets. Okay, the brackets around these words. I've added some definition. I've added some meaning so that we can understand the concept more clearly. So the law shows me my sin. It shows me. What does that mean? That it shows my sin. It shows, and I know, and I understand. I recognize. I see that picture on the MRI, and I realize. I notice that. So that's the law. Now, something to notice, okay? I. You see the word I in the text here? I. Now, who's speaking? That's Paul that's speaking, and he's talking about himself and his own personal experience in the past. He said, I thought I was fine. I had an MRI and realized the extent of my problems, my sin. Right? Paul's talking about himself and his experience with the law. Now, many of you know about Paul and his background and his history. In Philippians, chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, Paul is talking and he says, we put no confidence in human effort. Right? No confidence. No confidence. No confidence in human effort. And Paul says, but if someone was able to be confident in themselves, it should be me. Okay? He's talking about himself. It should be Paul. Other people have reasons for confidence, but I have even more reasons for confidence. In verse 5 and 6, in the text, he explains his background, he explains his experiences, and all the things that he has done in his life. Okay? Paul said that if a person was able to be confident in his own flesh, in his own effort, it should be him. Why is that? Paul, he was circumcised on the 8th day. Paul was what? He was a Jew. He was born a Jew. Paul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Right? He has all these credentials, right? Oh, what a good person. If a person can be righteous, it should be Paul that is righteous because he has done all these things for God. All these things. Look at this list. He was a Pharisee. He went and was highly trained. He was a Pharisee, going through extensive training. Paul, before his salvation, was very zealous. He was zealous for God. He was very hot to serve God. This was before his salvation. He would serve God in the flesh. And in that, he was zealous, explaining further that he would seek to arrest the Christians. Okay? He would drag them off to prison. And Paul says, I did that for God's sake. I was a pretty good person. Now, is this true? No. If you remember when there was one man who was killed, he was a Christian. His name was Stephen. I think it's in chapter 6 of the book of Acts. So did Paul throw stones at Stephen? No, but he witnessed it. He was a witness of the stoning of Stephen. He watched and he saw the crowd gather and throw stones and kill Stephen. And Paul was in agreement with what they're doing. He thought Paul was very, very zealous for God, but he was very blind. Now, Paul thought himself to be righteous. He thought he was a very righteous person. And later, he found the law showed up, and he realized the extent of his sin. I am not righteous. The law did its job in Paul's life. So looking at verse 7, Paul says about himself, he says, I would have never known that coveting is wrong, except the law said you should not covet.
Yeah.
Now, the word covet, here's a picture, a perfect illustration of the word covet. How many of you have a dog? You have like dog treats that you'll give the dog. And the dog gets all excited and you put a little treat down and you tell them, no, you stay, you wait. And the dog just starts salivating over this treat, right? You say, no, wait, you stay, wait, right? Okay, maybe you've done that before, right? And the dog's just losing control with all the slobber because it wants the treat so badly. That's what happened to Paul. Paul thought of himself as being fine, as being righteous, holy, he was good. And then one day he noticed the passage that said, you shall not covet. Oh. And he noticed that, and it began to stir up in him this desire, this covetousness. And Paul's like, oh no, like being in an MRI and seeing the results. Or if you remember here, I've listed the 10 Commandments here, and you're probably familiar with it, seen it before. It is a summary of the Old Testament law, just a summary of the law. And so it's summarizing the 10 Commandments, or it's summarizing the law. And you'll notice that it's divided into two groups here.
what?
The first one is how the Jews are to respond to God. For example, do not have any other gods. Okay? Don't worship any idols.
Worship. Okay.
Okay?
No.
So
Down.
that's Israel's relationship with God, and those commands apply to that. But starting in the fifth commandment says to honor your father and mother.
Okay. So,
Number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are talking about Israel's relationship with God.
5.
And then command 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are talking about Israel's relationship with other people. So the Ten Commandments are divided into those two categories. For example, do not murder. Right? Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not lie. And then number 10, the last one, number 10, don't want what other people have. Don't covet. It's the same word. Back up one slide. And don't do that. That's what it's saying. That's the meaning of that command. Don't covet, don't dwell on what belongs to other people. So if you think of coveting, think of the picture of that dog just really wanting that treat. God says, no, don't be coveting other people's houses. Ooh, look at their house. I want that house. I want that house. No. Right? Or another person, their van, Dusty, coveting your van and stirring up covetousness in us. We rejoice with you, Dusty, for your new van. All right. Also, if you read the book of Exodus, chapter 20, it explains don't be coveting another man's wife. Okay. Oh, she's pretty. I like her. No, not at all. No coveting.
Okay. No.
I need to go ahead and stop soon. So Paul says he never would have known. He never would have known about coveting and how coveting was wrong unless the law had said to him and showed him, do not covet. So this is a very interesting, we'll discuss it more next week. Before you carefully read this, you'll see that Paul says that before there was no coveting. He did not struggle with that. He read it and it became stirred up into his life and he began to covet. And that's very interesting, right? So the law caused Paul to start to covet. Okay. Now next week, we think that the law is automatically no good, that the law is sin. And no, it's not. The law itself is good and holy, righteous. The problem is the sin that's within us. And that's the issue.
No, we're done.
We'll go ahead and continue with